Hey, welcome back to Business 101, Introduction to Business. This is now our 6th lecture in this module on ethics and corporate social responsibility. And as you can see from this title slide, we are now talking about corporate social responsibility. This continues at our look at ethics in business and ethical behavior in business, and takes the form of this term that we have used now for about a decade now, called corporate social responsibility. What does it mean for a corporation or for a business to be socially responsible? What kind of conduct and behavior and policy and rule does that really suggest and imply for business in society today? Well, as you can see from this first slide, the whole concept of business working as a socially responsible partner in society is paired with this whole idea of our contemporary social consciousness. And as you can see here on the slide, the concept of accountability. What does accountability in a society mean? Well, with business, it has led to the expectation of an expanded role for business. And this expanded role now includes the protection and enhancing of the general welfare of society. I think that really what we're talking about is the realization that with a great accumulation of power, wealth, and influence, that business really is a force in society and can be a force for good, and in some examples, a force for not such good behavior and not such good consequences on society and people and citizens in general. Therefore, as you can see from the slide, the whole concept of accountability hinges on the fact or the understanding or the suggestion that business needs to have more than just a role to earn a profit and therefore to better its owners, but rather to protect and enhance the general welfare of society. And this really hinges upon a concept of societal behavior, which suggests that all members of a society should be held accountable for their behavior within that society. In other words, each member's behavior affects all the other members, whether that behavior is intended to do so or not. Just the fact that we're all in the same society means essentially we're all in the same sandbox together, and each member should play well with others in the sandbox. Simply what it means to be a good citizen in a society, a good member of a cultural group. Now, I used that illustration pointedly about being able to play well with others in the sandbox because, as I might have mentioned at the very beginning of this class, I have 2 sons. They're grown now, they're in their 30s and well along, happy in their careers and making wise, great decisions. But when they were little, I used to take them to the park where we lived. We lived in a relatively new subdivision and they just built this new park. And so when the kids were little, and I'm talking like, kindergarten age, right? I would take them over occasionally during the afternoon to the park to play in the sandbox with other little kids, right? And that's where, little kids under the tutelage of their parents many times learn to share their toys with others, how to play well with others, all those kinds of things. You know what I'm talking about? Some of you may actually remember those days. Well, when my boys were playing in the sandbox, this is sort of a brand new big old sandbox, occasionally there'd be this one kid from the neighborhood, right, who didn't really learn how to play well with others, and as a result, many times that little kid would be off in the far corner of the sandbox, and occasionally that kid would actually drop trowel and pee in the corner of the sandbox while all the other kids are still there playing in the sandbox. As a dad, of course, I'm looking around saying, where is this kid's dad? Where is this kid's mom? You cannot do this. You cannot pee in the sandbox when there's other kids playing. Well, that's exactly kind of the thing I'm talking about, is using that analogy. Our contemporary social consciousness calls upon all members of a society, including business, to behave as responsible members of that society and contribute to the collective overall welfare of that society. In other words, business needs to learn how to play well in the sandbox with others. Now, I guarantee you that may be a mental image you don't forget for the rest of this class. And this is where we get to the topic of social responsibility with regards to business. We call it corporate social responsibility, the overall way a business attempts to balance its commitments to relevant groups and individuals in its social environment. And we call these relevant groups and individuals organizational stakeholders. They have a stake in the outcome. Now notice we're not calling them shareholders. Shareholders, of course, is a technical term referring to ownership of a share of stock, and therefore they own shares. They are owners of a corporation, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about organizational stakeholders, which the textbook defines those groups, individuals, and organizations that are directly affected by the practices and behavior of an organization, and therefore have a stake in its performance. They are directly affected by what the organization, what the firm decides to do, how it chooses to conduct itself in society, and therefore they have a stake in the outcome. Who are major corporate stakeholders? Well, you see here this illustration, which is taken straight from your textbook, figure 2.3 in your textbook. You can see with the organization in the center of the diagram, there are many parties who will be directly affected by the choices, behavior, and conduct of the business organization. Of course, the employees of the organization will be directly affected by how the organization chooses to conduct itself, but also customers and suppliers and investors, indeed even the local community in which the business operates or has manufacturing facilities or has a sales office. Wherever though the organization has a footprint, they will have an effect, a direct effect upon that local community. Now these are just the major players that we identify as major corporate stakeholders, typical corporate stakeholders. But of course there are others. Any individual or group or organization that will be directly affected by conduct, behavior, and choices of the business organization, by definition, will be stakeholders. As a result, the stakeholder model of responsibility suggests that most companies, as they strive to be responsible to their stakeholders, will first and foremost think of those 5 groups in which we just listed in that diagram: customers, employees, investors, suppliers, and local communities where they do business. And therefore, when you start making decisions on behalf of an organization, those at least are the very first 5 large groups of stakeholders that you need to be considering as you're thinking through decisions on the level of corporate social responsibility that your organization may have in the society in which you live and work. And therefore, the stakeholder model of responsibility suggests, with regards to customers, that you'd be seeking to treat your customers fairly and honestly, that you would be striving to produce reliable products and services and deliver them at fair prices to the marketplace without price gouging, and that you would want to honor your warranties, your delivery commitments, and your customer service, both before and after the sale. With regards to employees, the stakeholder model of responsibility would suggest you are striving to treat your employees fairly, with respect and dignity and respect for their basic human needs, that you are looking to provide opportunities for them to balance their work and life, that you are trying to help them maintain job skills and grow them and stay current with them, as well as treating all aspects of hiring, benefits, incentives, rewards, with a mind to non-discrimination upon any of the legal axes. And this would be behavior, choices, conduct, and ethics, which would inhabit the very corporate culture that you have sustained at your organization. Then with regards to investors, you can see here continuing, the stakeholder model of responsibility would suggest at the very least that you are following proper accounting procedures and providing accurate and transparent information to shareholders and all interested investment parties about your financial performance. With regard to suppliers, just one example, you would be about creating mutually beneficial partnerships and arrangements with your suppliers. And then with regards to local communities in which you have an impact, involvement in local programs, possibly charities, other philanthropic work in order to build up and edify the community in which you live and work. And then, of course, a topic which over the last several decades has gotten a great deal of attention is corporate responsibility toward the environment in which we all live, with regards to our protection of air, water, and land, and a reduction or mitigation of the pollution that manufacturing facilities release into those kinds of domains, including disposal of toxic waste, adherence to recycling policies, and those kinds of things. This is all part of the stakeholder model of corporate social responsibility. Really, the key question as we consider this first definition of corporate social responsibility is, well, is it possible for business to be a force for good? Is it true that business will always end up taking advantage of stakeholders, being a poor citizen in the society in which it lives? Can business actually be used instead as a force for good? I certainly believe that's true. Let's take a quick look then at a video from the Bay Area corporation, Salesforce.com, and their commitment to try to be a force for good in society and the world in which it does business.
You tweeted, there are two kinds of CEOs, those that are authentically committed to improving the state of the world and those that aren't. What does it mean to you? What is this experience? What are you getting out of it?
Business needs to realize they're part of the solution, they're not part of the problem. I believe that the business of business is to improve the state of the world.
There was a time when neighbors helped neighbors, and communities meant so much more than just where you lived. A time when companies thought much larger than themselves. And being good corporate citizens was good business. But somewhere along the way, companies, big and small, lost sight of that. They became increasingly focused on just the bottom line. They started viewing giving back as a burden or afterthought to success. But giving is how we make a better world. A better world is how we can continue to thrive in life and in business. We live in amazing times where giving is easier than ever. A connected world of great thinkers, doers, and leaders showing the way, where impact is immediately measurable and results are easy to appreciate. Technology is helping us break down the barriers of giving, proving that our connections to each other will help fix all our problems. This is why we created the 1-1-1 model, a simple promise to dedicate just 1% of our time, 1% of our equity, and 1% of our product to worthy causes around the world. We are proud to say that to date, this formula has generated over 1 million volunteer hours, $90 million in grants to over 25,000 NGOs and nonprofits around the world. Our newly connected world is your chance to do better, be better, and live better. We are in a renaissance of giving. 1%. It's not a lot, but it means the world.
I hope that was an enlightening video for you. I can tell you, because I do have dear friends who work at Salesforce.com, that they are absolutely serious about their commitment to the 1-1-1 initiative and all that that means for their customers, their partners, and for life around the world where Salesforce.com employees can make a true impact for the sake of good in the world and the societies in which Salesforce does business. I think it presents at least one example for us to consider, that indeed there is a way for business to be a force for good in the world in which we live and work. I hope you find that useful. In fact, more than that, I hope you find it food for thought and inspirational as you consider your future career in business. We'll see you in the next lecture.